Okay, so we have looked at encryption in the previous video and understand that by simple definition, encryption is the process of protecting data by making it unreadable to unauthorized users. And we also understand that this happens at different levels. This could be at a disk level, where we simply want to protect data, making use of different technologies such as BitLocker in Windows or File Vault for Mac. And this helps us to protect everything that is on that particular drive, such that in the event that the drive is accessed by an unauthorized person, they can hardly access that data. It can also happen at a partition level, where you simply have, maybe you've got a partition C and your partition D over there, and you simply want to partition those particular parts of your drive and specify, for example, that the data partition, the one that contains data, must be encrypted. And then you could leave the other partitions unencrypted. You can do this at file level, at volume level, for your database, as well as a record. So this is the the lowest level you can actually go about encrypting data within your environment. But when it comes to encryption, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of scenario, as we understood that this also happens for data that is in transit, meaning data that is actually moving from one point to the other on our network. If we have a VPN, for example, over here, it will have a protocol that actually allows us to encrypt that data as it moves from point A to point B over there. And there are different types of scenarios that we can actually make use of over here. We have transport layer security, which adopts that. We have secure socket layer, or SSL, which adopts that. We have IPsec for various VPN solutions that are supported out there, like your Cisco, your Juniper, your Fortinet. They all employ these methods to encrypt data. And we also have SSH, which is a way in which you could remotely access devices and configure them in a very secure way, etc. So all these are very important when it comes to how we manage our encryption. But as much as we talked of asymmetric and symmetric encryption, we never really got to touch on the aspect of length. Now, length is really important because this is how large our encryption could be. And the larger or the longer the length of our encryption, the better it actually becomes. So what this simply ties into is what is known as key length. So over here we have key length over there, and we have different types of this length. For example, when you're looking at Advanced Encryption System, or AES, you're looking at a total of 256 bits. We also have different types of encryption methods that are out there, such as 3DES, you have CHA-20, you have Toolfish. Some of them are quite old and they're no longer really in use today. But for example, you are likely to encounter 3DES out there, and 3DES has a maximum of 168 bit when it comes to encryption. So this simply tells us that if you're looking at strengthening the encryption method that is in use for a particular file or partition or drive, we've got to go for one that has a higher key length. And in this case, instead of us picking on 3DES, we'll definitely go and pick AES over there. So this becomes very important for us to understand as we go about looking at the various options that are provided in our encryption systems. And also, it might be very interesting for us to understand what exactly we're trying to encrypt, where is the data hosted, etc. And if we have data that is hosted on a mobile device, for example, we might simply want to make sure that we go with CHA-20 because that is more optimized for mobile devices. However, it supports other encryption methods such as TLS and VPNs, which are also available over here. But the platform also plays a very, very big role when it comes to these encryption methods. Now, if you remember well, when we're talking about asymmetric and symmetric encryption, we mentioned the fact that if we're making use of symmetric encryption, we will be using the same key to unlock and lock our data. And AES and 3DS and CHA are great options that are actually provided when you're looking at symmetric key encryption. But the sophisticated part of encryption, which is the asymmetric one, which happens to be a little bit slower to encrypt and decrypt data sometimes, although providing us even a higher method of security, also comes with its own encryption methods. For example, you would encounter what is known as RSA, you have the elliptic curve or ECC, you have Diffie-Hellman, you have DSA. It's important for us to simply be able to distinguish where these would actually come to play. For example, if you're looking at strengthening your security and making use of two-way keys, which is what is provided in the asymmetric, you'd now have to look at something that provides you a large key size. With RSA, for example, you have up to 4096 bit, which is massive, which is really big and would greatly allow you to go ahead and encrypt your data. However, this would take a lot of time for that encryption and decryption process. But looking at the security side of things, it is actually worth it to lean on something that provides more time with better security than go with an option that encrypts and decrypts data at a shorter period of time and not really give you the amount of security that you may simply want. Elliptic curve cryptography would give you up to 521 bits, and then you have DSA, which would give you up to 20,048 bit. So all these would simply give you those options for digital signatures and for various secure exchange options that you may simply want within your environment. So if we have two devices, for example, that are simply connecting and we want to make sure that we have a more secure option that is provided, such as transport layer security, for example, that would make use of that kind of encryption, whether for your digital signatures or email security encryption or anything that simply has to have its data protected as it moves from one point to the other. Now, there are times when this data might also be stored on different platforms. Now, you know so well that we have a TPM module on most of these devices that we have today, which simply allows us to better secure our data. A TPM module would be great as it helps us to store data on that particular device. And this is actually required when you're doing an installation of Windows 11 or even Windows 10 and other latest modern operating systems. They simply require this for better security. You could also have, in addition to a TPM module, what is known as a hardware security module or SHM. And this is a solution that would actually allow you to store all your cryptographic data or cryptographic keys and keep them in a tamper-resistant environment. So when things are going wrong, you would know for sure that this particular section over here would securely store all your cryptographic keys within your environment. You could also have them in a cloud environment where you simply have a key management system of some sort or a vault where you would simply store those keys. And the goodness with a solution such as KMS or key management system is that those keys or those cryptographic keys would be rotated. So as they rotate, they simply change. They are altered in a way. They would still be able to work, but should anybody get hold of those keys, they don't remain in a static form for too long, giving you an additional layer of security over there. You can also have solutions such as an isolated CPU or a secure enclave that provides you with cryptographic keys that are secured in that particular environment. The use of an escrow is also very important. Escrows, from a business perspective or from a financial perspective, this is what happens when you're doing a transaction. And instead of you completing that money transaction at once because you're not trusting the buyer, you could involve an escrow. And what happens is that when you make that transaction of your bills, the escrow holds to that money and the buyer on this side releases the product. And once the escrow has proven that the product has been released, then it would proceed to complete that transaction. You can do that with cryptography, whereby all your cryptographic keys are kept by an escrow or within an escrow and only revoked or requested when you need them. This makes it more secure in the sense that you are not in charge of the keys and they are not kept on site and you don't really manage them, but you have given that responsibility to a trusted party that simply keeps them for you and only require them when the rightful procedures are in place to make sure that they are given to you or provided to you for a particular task. And this is what will inform your decision of the various cryptographic methods and where they would apply within your environment.